Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Matt with the Low Cash Homestead, and I wanted to talk to you tonight about some of the things we're doing while we are planning for our next market season. And also, I've been kind of chatting a little bit through comments with some new homesteaders, and I would consider myself a new homesteader as well. We've been at this for a few years, but um, I'll go more into that a little bit later. And about some things that I did previously before we bought this place in dealing with certain government agencies. So the one thing that I would start to do is one of the first things that I would do is as soon as you start gardening with the intent for with the intent of producing your own food or even producing food with market value, one of the first things that I would do is I would contact the Farm Service Agency and have them assign a farm and tract number to your property. The reason that I say doing that is you might live in an area where it's all farmers, it's all ranchers. It doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. In my experience, I lived in a metropolitan area and I did basically whatever I wanted in my tiny little backyard. And then when I sold that house and I moved back out to the suburbs, and I had a place with a giant yard, and I started farming that. Now, at the time, this was 2012 when we started that. And at the time, the state that I live in, their right to farm rule, and I have it basically memorized, was if your farm has been in operation for a year and has never been declared a nuisance, then you can never be declared a nuisance. In 2014, my state passed a different right to farm rule, and it more or less says our farmers have the right to produce food in the way that they see fit. And I took a screenshot of it, but that was on my phone, and we have no hardwire internet, so everything is done by hotspot. So hopefully, am I coming through to the people that are watching? Hopefully I'm coming through to you well. So one of the reasons that I would suggest registering your place with the Farm and Tract, with the Farm Service Agency, is that does a couple of things. One, it starts you on the road to being throughout the. Excuse me for 1 second. Please go to your room and shut the door. Thank you. Good night. You have school in the morning. Parenting never stops, right? So what that allows you to do is that allows you to have some version of the Right to Farm Act. Okay, the other thing that this will do is this will qualify that area with the USDA. And by doing that, you can get all kinds of help, whether it's with equip programs, maybe you want to add high tunnels, maybe you want to add growing equipment, and that will allow you to use the equip program as needed. Another thing that I think you should do is, whether it's a homestead, a backyard homestead, whatever the case is, you can talk to your private land conservation agent. They will come out, they'll take a look at your property, and they will give you, and this is like if you wanted, let's say, for example, living where I live around a lot of cattle ranchers. So let's say that I wanted to feed my cattle grass-fed and I wanted to do it with native forbs and native grasses. Then that private land conservation agent would be able to come out and say, okay, these are things that you can do. Now, the private land conservation agent, he's not an enforcement officer. Okay, he's just going to come out and say, this is what you can do, and this is what you can do, and this is what you can do for your pasture areas or areas where you want to restore native plots. Another thing that I would suggest is to talk to your state's soil and water division, especially if you have problems with erosion. This place is on a hill. We are on one side of a ridge. And so there goes the water, right? So I do have some erosion issues, and we've been able to start mitigating and dealing with those based on recommendations from the soil and water agent. Okay. And they can help you with erosion control and catchment and control systems and things like that, and then give you some good advice as well. And then the last thing that I would say on this area of things that I've had experience with and things that have helped me quite a bit. This is my second farm. My first farm was a suburban farm, and we operated that from 2012 to 2014. And we bought this place in 2014, and it is much, much larger, has been a lot more work. And we are, it's taken a little longer than I wanted to get things to the stages that we're in. But then the next piece of it I would advise is contact your university ag office. They're going to be able, how many acres, Pete's Little Homestead? We're on 5 acres. It's not a huge place, but when we bought this place, it was a mess. And, my son was just born. He came home from the hospital after we had bought the place. And so it has taken some time. Anyone who has raised a newborn knows that the first couple of years are very, very difficult. So my next piece of advice would be to contact your university ag office. They can help you with a lot of questions. They can do soil testing for you. And there are just a ton of services that your local university has that they can offer for you. Okay, so let's move on here, and we're going to talk about some of our plans as well as some of the advice that I have for when you're dealing in farmers markets and things like that. The first one is, excuse me, let me take a sip here. Those of you who've been watching my YouTube channel, you know that I have a giant cup of Coca-Cola most of the time. As much as we eat good and grow food and stuff like that, I haven't figured out how to grow Coca-Cola yet. So the moment I figure out how to grow Coca-Cola, we'll be in business, right? Okay, so let's talk about farmers markets. Most states, my state has this, and I'm sure others do as well. But if you're a vendor at a farmer's market and you're selling produce, one of the things that I definitely encourage you to do is to enroll in the Double Up program. If your farmer's market is a participating market in the Double Up program, as a vendor, you should enroll in that. And the reason behind that is because SNAP benefits, EBT, food stamps, whatever you want to call them, anybody who gets those and goes to farmers markets, if your farmers market has a Double Up program, or your state or your county has a Double Up program, then what that allows the SNAP recipient allows them to go to farmers market and they can purchase double their food items on produce and vegetables and fruits. And, each state might be a little different, but in my state, it's fruits, produce, vegetables, and plants that produce food. So if I were selling tomato plants or pepper plants, or in my case, I do quite a bit with on the local level with microgreens. I'm not at the Curtis Stone level of doing microgreens, but it's a popular item for us. But enrolling in that SNAP program, what that does is it allows you to bring in more profits, because you then trade those SNAP tokens for earnings. Okay, so the participant, the SNAP program participant, they get to buy more groceries. They get to buy better groceries. They get to buy food that is locally grown, locally produced. And for the vendors, it allows them to gain a revenue stream that the participants may. I can see the chat. I did for Pete's Little Homestead. It was, I am on 5 acres. Okay, well, 10 acres is nice. We went for some larger properties, but for us, we really needed to go with a place that had a pretty big house. I have a large family. There are 10 of us in total, not counting my grown kids. So I have 8 little kids, my wife and I, and then I have 3 more that are grown and they're off on their own. So, all told, there's 13 of us, but 3 of my kids are already grown and adults and out on their own doing their thing. So, thank you very much. Thank you very much. As far as, okay. So I will try to answer the questions in the chat, but I also want to get through my notes. So if you did ask me a question, just hang out and I'll try and do a little bit of Q&A afterwards or whatever. So if you have a Double Up program, You only have 1 acre, Pete? Well, that makes sense. I guess Pete's little homestead. Okay. Well, still, you can do a lot on an acre. And I digress here from our notes on subject matter a bit. But, Curtis Stone he's on, I think, less than an acre. And he's a quite successful commercial farmer. Doesn't do things necessarily in all the ways that us little guys and permaculture enthusiasts and things do. But man, you can learn a lot from watching him, and as well as a lot of the farms he visits. But for now, I want to go back to the notes, and I'll see if I can address you guys later on. One thing I would like to say is if you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe and hit that bell. And I would really appreciate if maybe you would share some of the videos that we do here at the Low Cash Homestead. Okay, so the SNAP Double Up program, that's a big one. That can bring in a lot of revenue for you because the SNAP participants, the participants can really expand their diet and eat healthier foods, and the vendors, of course, make more money. Another thing that you want to do is some of our local markets have items that are tax exempt, and you want to find out what your state's rules are on. Thanks, Pete. Thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate that. For those of you you want to look and see what items are tax exempt. In a lot of cases, and at least in my area at farmers markets, things that are tax exempt, fruits, produce, things like that, value added items may not be tax exempt. The other thing that I would say is to research what you want to sell. And before I started going to farmers markets, I paid a lot of visits and what I would call op-ed. Okay, so do we dare call it opposition research? But it was more market research. And in this case, it was literally market research. It was me going to the different farmers markets and saying, hey, what do you got? And what do you got? What do you got? And how do you grow this? And, and some people will keep their secrets close to their chest. Like right now, I keep my little notebook, right? It's close to my chest. So some people keep their secrets close to their chest. Some people will tell you everything. And that's a good way to learn kind of what might be good for you. Now, for me, I didn't plan on microgreens being my primary business, but as I did my market researches, none of the other markets in my area had them. So I took them in as a kind of a niche product, and we did pretty well. But of course, that's not going to be, that's not going to be my, that's the byproduct of Coca-Cola there, by the way. We're not going to use that as our primary produce. I spaced out on the word there, guys. Product. And we're not going to use that as our primary product. So, go around, visit the markets and kind of see what's around, and then also check into the rules as far as selling some of the things that you want to sell. Here's an example. I make an awesome pickle. I really make an awesome pickle, but I made them and took them down there before I did the research on whether or not I could sell them. As it turns out, based on Department of Health rules and a few other things that from the departments of making you sad, says, no, I can't sell these pickles. Well, I was giving them away. I was saying, hey, of the past before I moved. I'm not currently Sugar Creek Homestead of Tennessee. I'm not currently working a market. I have in the past before I moved. I loved it, looking to get started next year. See, so Sugar Creek Homestead of Tennessee, he's worked markets before, and so he's got a decent idea of, excuse me. On the floor. What?
I found this on the floor.
Okay, well, just sit tight, please.
I'm just watching you.
Okay, you can watch me. All right. So I don't allow my children to show themselves online. I guess I'm, paranoid or maybe smart or who knows. I don't know. But I don't allow them to show themselves online. So when I'm filming videos or, okay, hey, can you I'm trying to concentrate, okay? I love you very much, but I need to think. Okay? So I don't let them get online or be shown online. Okay. So so check into what you can sell and what you can't sell. Back to the thing about the pickles, so I make a wicked pickle, and I couldn't sell these things, but I started giving them away. And the next week, 50% of my customers were like, "You got any more of those pickles?" And I said, "No, I didn't bring any. I'm there. I'm not able to sell them." Like, "Well, we can go across the street in the parking lot. I'll buy a bunch of them." And they were huge. They were, and for the most part, when it comes to cucumbers, I primarily grow pickling varieties, and that's just because I love to make pickles. I make several different varieties. My kids love them. They store well, and I'll grow some slicers every now and then for salads and fresh eating. But you can slice a pickler all over your salad. But making a salad out of a pickle out of a slicer, they just don't come out right. The texture of the flesh is different. So I couldn't sell these pickles. So I was giving them away. I was like, hey, free pickles, And in the meantime, people would buy these microgreens, these 5x5 micro flats. I would sell my microgreens live. And I say, hey, bring me back that container and you get a discount. And so they would, keep revisiting me to buy their specialty greens. So just do your research on what it is that you want to sell. And then also, of course, and this goes in with doing your research, but contact your local DNH or DOH, your Department of Health. A lot of times they don't ask them, can I do this? Okay. Because if they don't know the answer, government employees default to no. No, you can't do that. So do your reading first. Okay. Most of these items, and I can't speak for everywhere, but in my area, a lot of these manuals and handbooks and things like that, they're online. So you just got to find them, read them, highlight the areas you want to ask questions, but do not ask them, can I do this? Because if that person doesn't know, the answer is automatically going to be no. And then another thing is, and here in my state, we have an agricultural directory. I ask you to stop doing that. Thank you. In my state, we have an agricultural directory. And so you can look at that and you want to find out who does what. Then you can use that ag directory to find out, let's say if you're doing value added products, maybe you bake the baddest chocolate chip cookie on the planet. And I'm going to go sell chocolate chip cookies, but I want to do it with, whole organic this and whole organic that. And maybe you want a $6 half pound organic cookie that can be a meal. Well, look in your state's ag directory and find out who produces what. And then you can have that as the wholesome ingredient that you want. And also, it's my experience that people will frequently pay a premium to get that. So the other thing, okay, now I don't have fancy equipment. We have a notebook. So that's me turning the page in our notebook. So some of the things that we're doing and planning for our next season. Egg sales. Egg sales are kind of a hit. I want to say that they're hit or miss, but they're regulated, not regulated. Yes, you need a license. No, you don't need a license kind of thing. If you're going to be off your property, then you're going to need one of 3 different licenses in this state. You can sell from your property, no problem. But in my experience, I've driven through the backwoods for 20 minutes to get to a carton of eggs before. And I just said, I don't want to do that. I'll buy them at the farmer's market. It's 20 minutes to get to the farmer's market, but, I can get whatever I want there pretty much. So if you plan on selling eggs or doing anything like that, then, you're going to have to find out what licenses you need. Now in my state, I need a no tax due statement, which says that I do not owe the state government any taxes. Well, I have that. And I need a business identification number. I have that. I tidied all that stuff up a couple of weeks ago. And then in my state, it's chicken, duck, quail, or goose, I think. Don't quote me on that, but there are 5 different birds that qualify into the same manual. And then so you're going to want to ask yourself, based on the rules, what equipment do I need? In my state, all I need is an egg scale and a candler. And you don't necessarily even need the individual egg scale because you're allowed up to a percentage of variance within the 3 different grades. So the 3 different grades in my state are, and I say in my state because a lot of the things I think are probably going to be across the board, but things do vary by state. So I say in my state, there's AAA, AA, and B grade. And there is a percentage, for AA grade, you have to have, this many, which I think is 87% or 89% of the eggs in that carton have to meet all those standards. So, you could bulk weigh and do things like that. But for me, I think, although more time consuming, I think we will probably go the egg scale. And then also, if you're in our area, if you're selling at a farmer's market, you have to have the weights and measures certify your scales. It can be a digital scale. It can be an analog scale. It can be whatever kind of scale, as long as it is certified to be accurate by Department of Weights and Measures. So that's something else that you might want to look into. Now, here is the funny part, okay? And I'm going to tell you a little story here. When we bought our house and homestead and we moved in, there was a lot of infrastructure here. The house was here. The garage was here. The house needed quite a bit of work. It had been left empty for a while. But their outbuildings were here. Chicken coops were here. And so cottage rules, and here they don't necessarily look at it exactly the same, but the main economy of my state is agriculture. So, and this goes back to registering yourself and getting that farm and tract number, because once you have that farm and tract number, there are a lot of things and local, especially when you're dealing in counties and areas like suburbs and things like that. Now, the Right to Farm Act does not give you a blank check. It does not mean you can do anything you want, but it also gives you a way to fight back if they say, oh, no, you can't do that. Now, the first farm that I had was a suburban farm, and the rules at that time, this law was passed in 2011, and I started that place in 2012. And it was, if you weren't a nuisance in the first year, then nothing you do can consider you a nuisance. So I waited that first year. I got my farm and tract number. I registered with the FSA. Then I immediately started on the process with the USDA. And then I waited that year. Waited that first year. And after that first year, when there were no nuisances, then I started building the big stuff. I started building the aquaponics. I started building the aquaponics greenhouse. I started building the high tunnel through the EQUIP program, and USDA had come in. And they had this really goofy rule that on chickens, okay? So I had my chickens there, and they had this rule that was the chickens had to be a maximum distance of this far from any neighbor. What they didn't tell you was that none of the plots in that community were that big. So they wrote a rule that said your chicken coop has to be farther away from the neighbor's house than your yard is. So they wrote the rules in a way to say, you don't get to do it no matter what. Well, I kind of did something a little sneaky on that. And I basically used geometry. And I said, hey, these are the 3 sides of the triangle. It just so happens that the chicken coop lined up with the longest side of the triangle from neighbor to neighbor to neighbor to neighbor by about 8 inches. So it was 150 feet, 8 inches. And there was nothing they could do. And then later on, the next year, as I built that extra infrastructure, they tried to do something about it, but they just weren't able to because they had no records of me being a nuisance within that first year. Since then, the law has changed, and it is, the farmer has the right to produce his food and his crops and his hogs and things like that in a manner consistent with methods in this area. So, and that rule has actually been challenged in my state Supreme Court, And it has come back to the farmer has the right to do that. You got to remember, no farms, no food. And not only would you be damaging the local economy, in the long term, you would be damaging the national economy, because we grow more food than pretty much anyone in the world. That's our number one export, the United States. So let's drop back to the things that you want to plan for market season. Now, here's a funny story. When we bought this place, it had all this infrastructure, and it had a chicken coop. It had a chicken house. Actually, it was like a 15 by 12 building, and it had nesting boxes and everything in it. And it had a yard that was fenced in with cyclone fence and cedar post, and it was a wreck. And I called a friend of mine up who lives in the town about 30 miles away, and he came over, and we demolished the yard. We kept the building. We made some basic repairs to it. And we had spent so much money on fixing the house. Hey, buddy, we're going to use what's here. And he's like, oh, I got some stuff left over from this and that. And he brought a bunch of stuff over, and we rebuilt the chicken run. The primary predator in this area is foxes and coyotes. So all the chickens were murdered or eaten. Not murdered. They were eaten. They became food for something else, right? Circle of life and all that. So one of the things that we plan on doing is, here I am getting egg licenses, and I haven't put a new flock in 2 years. So I'm going to get another flock. But before I do that, I have to put in a different set of infrastructure. Besides, that building is now being used, that building and run area is now being used for other small animals, puppies, dogs, in fact. It's a big area, too. It's like 50 by 30 or something. It's a huge place. And what is LGD? Tell me what an LGD is, and I'll tell you if I have one or not. Okay, so coons and possums. We have those too. Livestock guardian dog. I did. Here's the problem. She was a lab. And she liked to, she was here when we moved here. She was a very old dog. She lived 17 years. A black lab. That's a long life for a black lab. So no, I don't really have a livestock guardian dog. I kind of got her trained out of wanting to grab the birds many years ago when I still lived in the city. Oh my God, I got her in like 1999 or something. And, but we had ducks in my backyard in the city. I lived in the city, and we had ducks and chickens, and it only took one dead duck and a little bit of, what are you doing? And that pretty much solved that. But by the time we got here, man, she was old. She was blind. She was deaf. And, she didn't last much longer. I imagine if I could raise them with goats and chickens. We had another dog. His name was Tagalong. He died recently in a tragic accident. And in all honesty, that dog probably had 15 lives. He got attacked by coyotes. He fought off raccoons. He chased down deer. Personally, that really annoyed me, because here I am. I'm standing on my roof and I'm waiting, and I have my 357 lever action carbine, and I'm waiting on the roof, and I'm waiting for that deer, and he comes in sight, and then there goes my dog. The dog was the size of my Chromebook. He was tiny. He had big little man syndrome. I would seen him run down animals that were 5 times his size. I watched him run down. He nearly got himself killed by coyotes one night, but he stood his ground. But he did die in a horrible accident. Anytime an animal dies, I plant a tree or a bush or something on top of them so that they can, come back in another way. So let's go back to the notes here. So yeah, I got to get chickens. I got to get chickens again, and I'm actually looking at some large dog kennel style tractors. They're not going to be cheap. I think the last one I looked at was somewhere between $600 or $800, but it was all steel, welded wire caging, everything like that. And we're talking about like a 10 by 20 foot area, so 200 some odd square feet. So yeah, you could put a lot of birds in that. And then coops to go inside. And I want to get some best nesting boxes. And I was talking to my wife. I said, "Oh, these are really great. Look at the, videos on these. These are." Talk to different YouTubers who had them, and $250 per nesting box. It's like that's $250. $250 a nesting box. Why not make my own? Well, you'll be surprised that there's a line. There's a really thin line between how much you got to think your time is worth something. So there's a thin line in so many cases of, is it worth it for me to build this, or is it worth it for me to buy this? Now, let's say I wanted to do an NFT lettuce system and I wanted to have it, I might try to build that. I might build that because buying a commercially manufactured one is a few $1,000s and I could probably do it for less. But my time is worth something. Okay. So yeah, I might buy it. I might build it. But if it's made out of steel, I have a few, I was a union carpenter for many years. And so I know how to work with metal. I say carpenter, I didn't really work in wood. I did a lot of finish work, and that's where my wood came in. Can I build a house? Absolutely. Can I install a window? Absolutely. Can I fix wood? Absolutely, I can. But a good portion of my career was in commercial materials. So I'm a lot more comfortable working in steel and working in composites and things like that. Those are things that I know how to do. So would I build one? Yeah, maybe I will. But I'll have to do a cost analysis and see. And I don't mean, I picked up the term from a podcaster that I like to listen to. And he says Excel doesn't lie. Punch it in Excel, see how you come out. So that will be something for consideration. Okay. So now one of the things that's popular is in my state is selling plants. Okay. And that's something we're probably going to branch out into. Right. Okay. Cattle panels. Right. And, I was actually looking, I'm a big fan, and I have gotten many, many things from Tech Supply. And Tech Supply has these prefabbed little buildings that you can pick up for, $400 or $500. And they're made out of, I want to think that it's HDPE. And you don't get much tougher than HDPE when it comes to animals. You really don't. I digress. Let's kind of go back to the notes, and then we'll talk a little bit more on the chat room. So one of the things that is very popular at the markets in our area is selling plants. What kind of plants are you selling? What kind of license or registration do you need for that? In my state, you need a plant grower's registration if you're doing anything but annuals. So yes, are we going to propagate and sell vegetable plants? Yeah, I believe that we're going to do that. I'm also looking into, and I have already purchased from MDC. That's my state's conservation department, where they have a tree nursery, and you can buy saplings of, 50 to 80 different varieties. And I already ordered several hundred saplings. Then, maybe I'm going to grow them out. My initial plan was to use those as some species I would plant for firewood. I can't cut down every tree on my place. It's just not practical. Plus, what would I do then? I have to plant something, and so, I have some that I want for fruits and nuts, and others that are they going to take time to grow? Yes, I have a general plan in my head on how I can possibly accelerate that growth. I'm not going to get into that now. That's a topic for another day. So find out what you need. If you're going to sell plants, what do you need? Do you need a grower's registration? Do you need a dealer's registration? Are you going to sell annuals, trees, shrubs, bamboo? I actually got a small cluster of bamboo on the front of the property that has taken years to kind of take off. And that's primarily, I think, because it's so close to the road. And I'm going to be honest, the dirt here is crap. I spent a lot of time amending soil to make things grow. So, are you going to sell annuals, perennials, trees, shrubs, whatever you're going to sell there? That kind of depends on what license you're going to need. For us, we're going to start with annuals. I've already submitted to my state's. This is something you might want to take note of. This one, my state calls it Plant Industries Division. They handle nurseries and anything with producing trees, shrubs, annuals, perennials, whatever. And so you want to submit your applications to those. Okay. I know I'm talking a lot about submitting paperwork to government agencies, and a lot of us are homesteading because we don't want to deal with people being in our business. But you kind of make certain things your business, and the last thing you want to do is be in the middle of a good run at the farmer's market and have the guy from the Department of Making You Sad come and go, "Hey, I need to see your propagation license." So, and then shut you down, because then you're going to have an extended amount of time where you're not going to be able to earn your income and make your money because the guy from the Department of Making You Sad said, he stamped you no. Just food for thought there. Okay, and then, so now one of the things that we've been wanting to do since we bought this place, and I just was able to get into it, and you can go back to the Low Cash Homestead channel, and you can see some of the things that we've started to do, and that's mushrooms. And we have lots more plans for mushrooms, but in order for me to sell mushrooms, the rules say that I have to meet these certain requirements. And one of them is I either need to be certified in mushroom identification, and there's a class that you can take for that, or you have to submit paperwork from where you bought your spawns. So I went that route. And within 2 days, I had my mushroom seller's license and, a copy in my email that I can present. Because what they'll do is the Department of Health will then forward to all the markets that you want to sell, at least in my area. So I said, hey, I'm going to expand to a few other markets this year, but I don't want to have to wait. Can you just send me the certification email? So yeah, so we have that. And so, do you need ID training? Do you have to supply documentation of what kind of spawn you got and where you got it and other things like that? And then there's some, what are you going to do if you're doing value added? This goes back to like, I make an awesome cookie. Okay. In my case, it's pickles. I do make awesome cookies, but I'm not going to sell cookies because there's a bunch of bakers there and they do pretty well. And I'm not going to really mess with that. It's not a market I want to try and tap into. I'm going to tell you, the Mennonites that are there, they are fantastic bakers. They have some of the best baked goods I've ever tried. Okay. And then so, you can do value added or crafts items. Those may or may not be taxable. And if they are taxable, then you have to collect that tax, or you have to, allocate that, 10 cents total of, whatever you earn per unit has to go to the tax man. And then some general things. It's easy when you're homesteading and you're looking at, I have a tendency to see things for what they could be and not necessarily what they are, especially when it comes to houses. Farm, piece of land, that that 1985 Monte Carlo Super Sport that guy's sitting in that pile of, sitting over there in a pile of weeds, and you look at it and go, "Ooh, that's an 1885 Monte Carlo Super Sport." And then you look at it and you see in your mind, you boom, you remember being 17 years old or and hauling ass in that Monte Carlo Super Sport, and there's one sitting over there in the weeds that is toward hell. And you see in your mind, you say, boom, I know what that can be. So one of the things is I have the tendency to see what things can be and not what they are, especially when it comes to, I build things. That's what I did for a very long time is I built stuff. And you look at a drawing and you go, I see what this is going to be. And then you make it. And I take that same approach kind of to homesteading. Now, my homesteading approach is very, very different from other people's. We are not off grid. We're 66.6% off grid. I have one utility, and that is electric. And you can't really see it, but let me tilt the thing up there. Back there behind me is something. It's off right now because I don't need it. That is something called an AC/DC 12. That is a third generation. That one does require a grid hookup, and I've mentioned this on well, I'm not going to get into that, but that is solar powered. After my time in the Carpenters Union, I went on to do renewables, and I did that for about 5 years. And the amount of power that this house consumes, it's 2,200 square feet, and I've done everything I can, but the amount of power it consumes, it's just going off grid. It's not practical for us. But I can mitigate those. We've done all the power saving things that we can. So in that aspect, am I off grid? No, I am 66.7% off grid because I have one bill to actually, and we'll get to the other one in a minute. Power. And the other thing that I rarely see addressed is garbage services. We like to think that we can mitigate ourselves down to this tiny amount of garbage. And in a lot of ways you can, but, juice comes in a plastic jug, milk comes in a plastic jug, soda comes in a glass bottle. Those things are all recycled, but you still either need to take it 30 minutes to the recycling center or you need somebody to come pick it up. That's not a huge expense, but it's one that you initially may not think of. It has nothing to do with farmers markets or government agencies, but I figured I would bring that up because it's commonly overlooked, and I overlooked it myself. I said, we got here. Next thing I know, I've got all this garbage. I'm like, oh my God, what do I do with this garbage? And the other thing is that all of these small mom and pop refuse disposal companies out here, they kind of went out of business. And so I'm left dealing with a national conglomerate. You might know them if you think about who they are. They're the ones that take our garbage and they put it into biodigesters and they sell it back to us as the new natural gas. Let's think about who that might be. They're a huge national company. So one of the things I would say is try not to spread yourself too thin. It's easy when you're homesteading to say, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. And that was particularly a challenge for me for the first couple of years. I took about 8 months off. We had enough money that I could stay home for a while, but after about 8 months, my youngest son was just being born. I wanted to stay home, and I stayed home for about 8 months, and we had enough money to do that. But sooner or later, you have to start bringing income back in. And so, and by this time I had already left the union. I had already left the trade union, and I had already left the renewable energies. A lot of things in my state were kind of ending. Now, a year and a half later, they picked back up because they, changed some laws and did a few things that allowed RE companies to get their feet moving again. But by that point, I was like, I don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it anymore. So I want to go about and do my thing and not worry about it. And, we do okay doing that. So try not to get too spread out and try to think about what you can do right now that will add value and bring something back to you. And there's one other thing, and I don't have it with me. So if you guys just sit tight, I'm going to go get it. And when I stand up, I am lounging in my pajamas. I do a lot of stuff here at the Low Cash Homestead as far as editing our videos. I do that stuff at night after the family goes to bed. Because, there's 8 kids and me and my wife. So sometimes you just need a little bit of quiet to concentrate. So I do a lot of that stuff when after they've gone to bed. Okay. What? Jalen. So I'll be right back. I'm going to show you this last thing. So when I stand up, you're going to see me in my PJs. You're funny. Hey.
I put it on the floor.
Yep. Okay. So let me get this thing. And
Oh.
Yeah, the battery in my high def camera died. So I was recording while I was recording, and I was hoping to extract the audio and use it as a for rather than re-record this as a podcast. And maybe I can extract the audio from this video. I don't know. So anyway, one of the things that I wanted to show to you guys, and this is probably one of the best things that I have bought, is this. The American Horticultural Society's Guide to Plant Propagation. This book, it's not a book that you're going to start at the front and read through. You might, if you are fascinated by botany, you might. A lot of it is dry, okay? It's factual information. But this is a book, when I think about growing something, this is the book that I grab. And I look and I say, how can I grow that? So, just real quick, I have markers in the book all over the place. And so, one of them would be, how am I going to divide bamboo rhizomes? How am I going to start a climbing orange? What do I need to do to start a climbing orange from seed? Do I have the climate here to grow pineapples? No, I don't. But I am starting to, this room that we're sitting in now is giant. And the moment we bought this house, I said to myself, it's narrow, but it's long. It's got stone floors, wood ceiling, tongue and groove wood ceiling, barn beams. It's a beautiful room. And we put these fusing layers over the windows because if I'm going to grow things in here, I need the light. I did that a while ago. And when I first started doing the microgreens as a way to supplement kind of the electric light. And one of the things that I really want to do to this room, and I got to get that through the channels as it would be, because I am not a single man, is I want to put 8 solar tube skylights in here. That would probably make this room where I don't need any artificial lighting. And if I can do that, then I have to go through the channels as well and figure out how to get rid of the furniture that's in here. Because I really just want to fill this room with growing plants. When I walked into this place, when we first looked at it, that's what I saw. I said, atrium, giant room filled with windows, faces west. Put some solar tube skylights in here. That's a battle for. That's probably going to continue on for a little while to see if we can actually get that done. But this book, The American Horticultural Society's Guide to Plant Propagation. Like I said, it's not a book. It's not a novel. It's not something you're going to likely read from front to back. But the wealth of information in this book, fantastic. Okay, and there are things in here that I've been studying, not because I've done them, but because I want to do them. Particularly with starting trees and shrubs. I think backyard nursery in our area. There is one backyard nursery that goes to the farmer's market, and they do pretty well. They come with a lot of inventory, and they leave with almost none, and they do that frequently. So normally I don't pursue fields that are, unless I'm interested in them. And again, I can't cut down every tree here for firewood. And that brings me to, this is also not related to farmers markets or government agencies, but try to have some redundancies in your homesteading. For us, my big thing is we have power glitches, and sometimes they go 15 minutes. Sometimes they go 2 hours. We've had them go 3-4 days. 3-4 days is pretty rare. But we have redundancies, especially for heating and cooling. So we have our primary heat pump. We have the solar hybrid. We have bottle gas, several bottle gas things. I can run an LP fireplace if I need to. And then I have, of course, if you watch my channel, you know how much I'm in love with my Daco, one of the best wood furnaces I've ever had. And in fact, it's the first wood furnace. Maybe that's why I'm so partial to it. I think next time, if I were to build this place from scratch, I would probably go with an outdoor model, because I see a lot of the ranchers around here, and they have these outdoor models, and they don't season anything. They don't worry about it. They just cut it down and chuck it in there, and you don't have to. There's no chimney inside your house to be contaminated with creosote. The chimneys on these things are like 2 feet tall, and they just, there you go. Okay. So this is Matt with a Low Cash Homestead. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope that maybe we've discussed something that you were interested in and that you cared about. Okay, so let's just take a quick look here. See, I'm using my Chromebook. I don't have I mentioned before that we run on skeleton internet here, because that's just kind of the way it is. There's nothing here. We had HughesNet at one point, and man, you pay out the yin yang for getting basically nothing. Okay, well, so living the dream. We've talked to you guys a little bit. Peaceful Homestead. We talked to you a little bit, and Sugar Creek Homestead of Tennessee. Is very, very nice to meet you. Hopefully, we've liked each other and subscribed to each other. I'll go back and look, but I think that I have. And you're not currently working a market, but you have in the past before you moved, and you loved it. See, because farmers market, man, you meet all kinds of people there. And I think a very interesting thing, and this might be, I am extremely thick-skinned. It's very difficult for me to be offended by people. Most people just, they don't bother me. They can say blah 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 blah, and whatever. Doesn't really mess with me too much. Now, if you were to insult my children or my wife, that might be a problem. But me, whatever. I don't worry about it. And Pete's Little Homestead, you only have an acre, man, you can do a lot with an acre, okay? The main production area that I'm doing is maybe to an acre to 2. And then I have another acre across the road that is forested. And I'm going to do some crop management in there eventually, but it's also a ravine. So it's like walking down the side of a mountain. I am in the foothills of the Ozarks. My elevation here, I think, is right around 900 feet. So we are not in the mountain range. We are in the foothills. And I believe that, if I remember right, my elevation is somewhere around 900 feet. So honestly, I don't know. Do you guys do anything else for a living? We have several little income streams here. And agriculture is one of them. Okay, and what state am I in again? I never said. I never said what state I'm in. I had like a little bit of anonymity, Missouri. I'm in Missouri. So we're in Missouri, the Show Me State, right? And we are plenty ways away from the city. Should be ready. I still don't know what an LG. Oh yeah, livestock guardian dog. Okay. Yes, coons and possums are an issue here, but it's starting in the early fall. You can just hear the packs and packs of coyotes. And when we first moved out here, a little interesting story. When we first moved out here, I had heard foxes before, but man, my wife shoot up in the middle of the night. She's like, "There's a woman screaming." That's a fox. It sounds like a blood curdling female scream. That's a fox. It's a fox. Or the little girl from The Ring, one or the other. So, bad horror movie jokes. Okay. I think maybe if I can raise a livestock guardian dog, then I would probably. We also plan on doing ducks here. I've had ducks before. I had ducks long before I got my first farm, and I had like 3 of them, and one of them was killed, and it was a scolding to the dog, and then that was pretty much the end of it. Again, why not make my own? Well, there's a fine line between what's my time worth, what's the materials going to cost, versus this one is engineered and ready, and I can just go buy it and put it together. There are things that I do like to build, so sometimes. We talked about the cattle panels. I am finding just versatility with cattle panels. I have some cattle panel projects in mind. One of these days, I'm going to do a live through the property and kind of show you some of the things. Now, I actually built my trellises out of PVC pipe and WWF, not World Wrestling Federation, welded wire fabric. And in fact, I don't think the World Wrestling Federation even exists anymore. Welded wire fabric and PVC pipes and some elbows and stuff, which gave it me the ability to remove them easily when it was time to mulch the grounds and rework the grounds. Because I've been mulching the grounds with yard waste every year since we got here.
Dad?
And yes.
Do they write down the things and you have to watch you?
Okay, fair enough. And so Sugar Creek Homestead of Tennessee, yes, I see the potential. I'm a very optimistic person, and I do see what things could be rather than what they are, especially when it comes to a vision or a project that I want to do. I say, hey, I have this idea. Let's find something suitable for it. I got friends in Missouri and Joplin. Okay, Joplin is nowhere near me. But the thing about Missouri is you can travel across the state in about 4 or 5 hours. Traveling north and south, that's something else. That can take some time, but I can be in Arkansas in hold on, Rennie. I can be in Arkansas. I can be in the Ozark Trailway in about an hour, and I can be in Arkansas in about 2. And that's traveling through some of the national forests in the southern part of the state. So, curvy roads, lots of lumber mills, lumber trucks, things like that. You do it this time of night, you can do it in less time. But if you do it in the daytime, it's going to be a couple hours. And that'll bring you out around, if you travel through the national forest here, you'll come out somewhere around Bull Shoals. It's usually where I end up coming out. Anytime I've made that trip. I had an interesting time when I was in Arkansas, northern Arkansas, in that Bull Shoals area, and mixed family. And man, the looks I got from some people. It was, but I have come to find out that there is a that doesn't speak for the whole state. But in that particular area, some of the looks I got from some people. Another thing you might want to consider, and this totally spaced my mind when we made the move, but it's something that you should consider. And I kind of make this point jokingly, but in all, it's a very serious point, at least for me, is that there's no kosher butcher shop anywhere near me. It's an hour and a half ride to get to the closest butcher shop. Okay, so I haven't eaten pastrami in a year and a half. I haven't had pastrami in a year and a half because you can't get it. Not even the local Wally World sells pastrami. Kind of been a sticking point here. I can get sauerkraut all day long, but who doesn't love that? But who doesn't love pastrami is the way I'm looking at it. But it's an hour and a half ride to get pastrami. Okay. All right. So that's just a little comical point about what happens when you move to the sticks. So, he rang my bell. Okay. Yeah, Sugar Creek Homestead at Tennessee. Yeah, so I'll get to that tour. I don't know if I'm going to do a live tour, if I'm going to tape it. It kind of depends how the family scenario goes. And what I mean by that is, who's getting along with who at the time, and whether they're older children or the little kids, or the little kids can be a lot of fun. In the garden, and I don't feature them really, but there are some clips of my youngest son and I, and he's just going through the garden eating stuff, and we're just out there eating stuff. But I try to keep their faces out of the videos. It's a safety issue, I think. So I think that's and now let's see. Okay, so Living the Dream says they're going to binge my videos. I'm going to be honest. The older they get, the more like rudimentary the information I'm giving is, and I'm just like, everybody knows how to bend soil, but I did it anyway. And for me, it's I'm turning in. I'm turning in yard waste and stuff. Now, the last season, the last turn in that we did prior to winter, because I put a bunch of stuff in, I turned it, and then we laid it on top of it. That's the last turn we're going to do. And here's another thing is that I'm kind of stuck in this place where we're going through the equip program, because this is my second piece of ground that I've had to qualify. We did it in 2012, and then I had to start it all over again when we came out here. And there was some delay on that, and it mostly just because of things being overwhelming with an infant child. And then my daughter was born, and then so I'm going through that infant child thing again. So my son had got to be a little over 2, and then my next daughter was born, and then my oldest of my young daughter, not the adults. I have 3 adult daughters. They're off doing their thing. But then the youngest of my little kid daughters, she's not little. She's looking at me like, what do you mean, little kid? Yeah, we're not off grid, but we're so far out. We're far enough out into the stick. Like I said, I can't get internet. And it's Sugar Creek Homestead. So, and don't worry, nobody judges. I'm just saying that if you're looking like the older the videos, the more like basic and rudimentary kind of stuff I'm talking about. But the oldest of my little girls is looking at me. She's 9. She's looking at me like, "What are you talking about, little girls?" So anyway, and so between family life and stuff, yeah, it's taking us a little bit longer than we planned, but just some of that stuff is like, hey, I got a bunch of yard waste, and I'm going to turn it into the ground, and it's 5 minutes of me telling you I'm turning leaves into the ground. So that's that. Okay, so Sugar Creek Homestead of Tennessee, you said driving to town is a pain. I made. You have internet, but nothing else. That's the thing is like, have power and have garbage service. But no, I don't have internet. Like I said, I don't know if you were tuned in, but we did have HughesNet for a while. But it's not economical. I can get double the data on a 4G cell phone hotspot than I could get with HughesNet for half the price. So and Sprint works very, very well here. Sprint and AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon do not work very, very well here. To me, well, see, that's good. And see, this. Let's talk a little bit about why you brought up a good point, Sugar Creek Homestead, is that you said internet's your only bill. I have actual DSL, and it said DSL can't even get DSL here. Let me put it this way. We were going to have a landline phone put in just for ish purposes. Okay. Maybe I was outside or something, and there was, who knows, whatever kind of emergency. I can't even get a landline phone here. they have the boxes, but they're like, oh, those lines haven't been serviced in forever, and we'd have to come out and put a new line in, and blah blah blah, and all kind of stuff, and so, and maybe that's just them talking for the upsell, but yeah, I could get it, but it's disgustingly expensive just to have like a basic landline emergency phone number phone. The other thing is there's a couple videos where I show that I'm putting USB power ports all over the house. Phone company came out, but power won't. Hey, here's something that you might want to consider. And you probably want to do a little bit of research on this. But if you have a landline, then you're carrying low voltage. And if you have low voltage, usually the phone lines range somewhere between 40 and 50 volts at like a trickle of amperage. You might want to do a little research, but I have heard 89 volts. Okay, so if you've got 89 volts and you've got this tiny little bit of amperage, I'm going to bet that you're a phone tech. Okay, so why don't maybe steal some of your phone voltage for your battery bank chargers? I use MiFi for internet. I don't know if we have that here. I'm going to check that out. But I'm betting that if you have wait a minute, didn't you just say you had DSL? Yeah, Living the Dream. You said you had. Oh no, that's Living the Dream that said they have DSL. So yeah, Living the Dream. I'm surprised you're not stealing that low voltage for your battery banks. And you'd have to do some research on that. But I think that probably that's AC, so you're probably going to need a rectifier and some kind of charge controller to make that work. But yeah, I would think you could probably rob some of that phone current for your batteries. I've never done it. As a I'm a certified solar professional. I just don't feel like doing the work. I don't feel like doing it anymore. Let's just be honest. I kind of I just want to grow things and sell things. Grow vegetables and sell them. But one thing I wanted to say is you said that internet was your only bill, and that is let's see who said that. So Living the Dream says that that's their only bill, right? So that's kind of what low cash homestead means. It means that what we did is we got ourselves out of debt. We paid cash for the house. We paid cash for the repairs. The vehicles that we have, they're not new. They're not super old, but they're not new. But we paid cash for those. Low cash homestead is like, when I was a carpenter, man, I made $1,600 a week, and I shelled out $1,500 of it in bills. So cost of eating aside, just bills, less than $500 a month to keep this place going. We might starve to death. That's a joke. Feeding the family costs a small fortune. But, when I came up with the name Low Cash Homestead, it's because we
barely have money, and
we barely have bills. Yeah. But we don't need a lot of money. So, and as an adult and, spending 20 plus years humping my butt for just to pay bills, we didn't want to do that anymore. We didn't want to do it anymore. So we paid for everything in cash, and but then again, I will say that the first 2 years I did continue to work. I just it was a little bit different because I'm not going to get into how much we spent because that's not really that important, but it did take a significant amount to be, and this is a 2,200 square foot house, and I have, like I said, 8 kids still in the house, than my wife and I. So, Yeah, and see, so like Sugar Creek is saying, hey, he wants to reduce the his need for cash, and that's basically what we did. Now there was a lot of cash output to do that, but I don't have a mortgage. I have let's see, car insurance. Oh, okay. I said electric was my only bill. That's not entirely accurate because you have to have car insurance. You don't have to have homeowners, but man, you should. You shouldn't. And it's high out here because I'm a long ways away from the fire station. But I'd rather have and not need than need and not have. But a lot of things that we do, and one of the ways that we kind of are able to do this. Well, Sugar Creek Homestead says it took years to pay off the land, but he did, and that's exactly what I'm talking about: living bill free, or is. And Pete, I only have electric, phone, and internet auto insurance. Yeah. So let's just, I want to address something here. And we covered the main topics, and now I'm just enjoying talking with you guys. One of the things that the way that we are able to do this is we still, we have income streams. Okay. But we take our tax refund. I take my tax refund and I say car insurance for a year is going to cost this. Homeowners for a year is going to cost this. My wife really wants to have home Wi-Fi again. There is another company that is available here now. It's called Viasat. They used to be called Exceed, and they got rid of data caps. So, they got rid of data caps. What that actually means is you fall into the fair usage clause where you could be throttled if you using internet in times of high demand, stuff like that. Less expensive than HughesNet, but she does want household Wi-Fi again, and we might add that. But that's still the way we've been doing things. The way we get away with doing things, and the way that makes this work is you take your tax refund, you pay your car insurance for a year, you pay your homeowners for a year, you pay your reoccurring insurances and things like that. You pay them for a year, and then you're basically got a year where if an emergency comes up, then you try to handle that in whatever way possible. But you've got a year where, hey, do I got to pay the car insurance this year? This month? Do I got to pay the car insurance this week? Do I got to pay the homeowners? What do I got to pay? If I could pay my electric a year at a time, I would. But unfortunately, they don't let me do that. So, if that was possible, that I would. And then, you get a couple of things that you want, or you allocate things aside. So for example, we're going through the program for Equip. Best I know, last conversation I had, we were in process, and it was hurry up and wait kind of thing. Now I know that out of pocket, I am going to spend somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. I'm going to get a good portion of that back through Equip program. And this goes back to register your place with FSA. Just because you're surrounded by farmers, just because you're surrounded by ranchers, doesn't mean you're always going to be. Let's say that old Farmer Smith, who's 89 years old, and you see him every day, and he's out there baling hay every morning through the hay season, and he just drops over dead one day. And maybe his wife died, or maybe she died soon, and maybe she hangs on for a couple of years. But maybe his kids don't want to follow in cattle ranching. Maybe they don't want to be ranchers. And the next thing you know, there's 700 acres that are being sold off to the highest developer. Or to, It was very nice to meet you too, Living the Dream Homestead. And this has actually gone much longer than I thought it would be. It's simply because I've been enjoying answering your questions and talking to you guys. But, don't assume that you're going to have the understanding of the people around you for the entire time that you're doing this. So, every state has a right to farm, some type of right to farm law. And by getting yourself established with farmer track numbers through the FSA, that makes you a farm, and therefore you have certain legal protections, especially in cases like that. Okay, guys, thank you very much. I don't know when my next live chat's going to be, or live broadcast is going to be. We're going to try and set this up on a regular basis. Tonight, I was planning it and I was writing it out. As far as taking the general outline of things that we're going to talk about. My wife had to go for a run to Arkansas for something she's got to do there. And I had to get all the kids to bed. I have one who is still up, who has been watching me this whole time. I'm looking at her right now. She's got a big ish eating grin on her face. And then the last thing I would say is if you're a big fan of pastrami, try to find a place that has a deli. No, there's no delis around here. There's no delis. There's one deli and it's a gas station, and I've tried to get them to bring in pastrami, but it's a gas station, deli, pizzeria, convenience store. It's the closest place to shop. 20 minutes to Walmart, or you can go 10 minutes to the gas station, deli, pizzeria. So I'm trying to convince them to bring in some pastrami because that's like one of the biggest things I miss is pastrami. Anyway, you guys have been great. Thank you very much and have a good night. Oh, the Chromebook is not touchscreen. I've had this thing this long and I'm still trying to touch the screen. I don't know why I didn't buy a touchscreen one.
Mom actually bought it. For you.
Thank you very much. My name is Matt with the Local Homestead. Thank you very much.